大家好，欢迎来到周一详谈，我是 Katrina Chen 陈伟珍。今天我们的节目请到了一位卑诗省非常重量级的政治人物，他尤其是在我们现在省民非常关心美国川普对我们造成关税的这个影响，他的决策呢都会影响我们本地的经济。我们今天请到的这位人物呢，我虽然是跟他在政治上面认识的，而且同事多年，但是大家不太知道的是，我其实还曾经跟他主持过谈话性的节目，而且呢，他的这个知识非常的丰富，然后也有很多资深的经验，来自不同的方面，所以我们今天很高兴能够请到我们卑诗省的省长 David Eby。Welcome, Premier Eby.
Thanks, Katrina. Nice to see you.
It's great to see you here. It's kind of like deja vu because we actually hosted a podcast together.
We did, yeah. I'm getting flashbacks.
I know.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of interesting conversations, and that was also the time that I really got to know you more as a colleague, as a politician, and as a person who truly cares about our community. But I remember one time we had a podcast episode where it was just the two of us talking, and you made this joke about, because at first we didn't have a guest and you were worried about, okay, what are we going to talk about? And then we just ended up talking the whole podcast, and the time flew by so quickly.
Hopefully that happens here. Let's try it again.
That is right.
Yeah.
And then you say when you put two politicians in a room that we can just talk forever.
That's right, exactly right.
So today I have a lot of questions for you, of course, but I really want to start by beginning with asking more about you. What got you into politics, and for our audiences to learn more about your background and your passion for community services.
Oh, sure. So it goes back some distance now, Katrina. So it goes back to about 2008. I was working in the downtown east side, helping people who were in housing that was very substandard. We did some work in Chinatown with Chinese seniors. We did some work with people living in those residential hotels. And we go to the city of Vancouver and ask them, especially around the residential hotels, you know, can you enforce your rules around standards in these buildings to make people safe? And the city council would never do anything. So finally I said, you know, I'm going to run for city council myself. I was a very confident young man, maybe too confident. But I came very close to winning, and the reason why I wanted to go into that to do politics, I actually studied law, and it was to try to find ways to make a difference in the community, to make a positive contribution, and that was the same reason why I went into politics. And so I ran one time and I lost, and then I ran against Christy Clark and I lost again. I was elected for the first time just over 10 years ago, representing Vancouver Point Grey, and you know, it's interesting because housing was the reason that I got into politics, and it's still such a major issue for our province, for people. So it continues to be a big reason why I'm involved.
Yeah, and you have been a strong advocate for affordable housing. You were the critic for housing, and then you also did a lot of work as the minister responsible for housing. And I think most well known by a lot of our audiences is that you also did a lot of work with ICBC, anti-money laundering. Can you share a little bit about your journey from a lawyer, a community activist, to become an elected official? And now the premier, really the leader of our province. How does that feel differently throughout this journey personally for you?
Well, it's interesting. So when I was a community activist, as you say, in the downtown east side, you know, the people I was working for, I was a very specific group of people. I knew who I was working for my clients who didn't have housing, or their housing was very, no heat or hot water, or there were bugs, like stuff like that. And so I just totally focused on what were their priorities. And then each time the group that I represent and the group that I'm working for has gotten bigger and more diverse in their interests. And it's very simple when you represent a very small group, and you don't have to worry about the concerns of any other group. You can just be focused on that group. But as the interests of people get broader, and so now being responsible for certainly the community I represent directly, Vancouver Point Grey, but the whole province, even people who didn't elect NDP MLAs, that's where the work of bringing people together and having conversations and finding a path forward becomes more and more important. So it's shifted in that way, but some things remain the exact same. You know, being accountable to real people, what's going to make a difference in their lives, as opposed to whatever the experts or the philosophers or some spokesperson that they pulled out of a university somewhere, like whatever, any of those. It's like, what is going to make a difference for people in the community? Otherwise, if I can't make that difference, then I don't want to be doing this job. And so staying focused on that priority, it's been the same through.
That's incredible to hear. It kind of reminds me that when I was in politics, that feels like a different life now.
I'm sure it does, yeah.
Interacting with you now brought back a lot of memories, but whenever I had challenging situations or making a difficult decision, I always thought about my experience in the grassroots level, working with people in the community, and why did I join politics in the first place? So I hear a lot of echoing there about your grassroots experience really helped you to become a successful premier and getting reelected again. Well, the first time as premier, but reelected as an MLA and a representative for our community. So now you have a very important job, and I would say a very difficult job. I think a lot of audiences may not be able to imagine the life as a premier. It's very challenging. You're working all the time, lots of major decisions and threats sometimes, and challenges thrown at you, like what's happening with the US and the tariffs now. How do you deal with challenging situations like this? Let's use the US tariff situation as an example. And how are you going to help our province to go through those challenging situations?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time in the province because there's a period of time where, and not just in British Columbia, but across Canada, kind of the idea of being Canadian and what does it mean and what holds our country together, and it was kind of a bit vague for people. And certainly in British Columbia, I know that whenever they do polling, British Columbians say they feel the least connected to Canada of anyone in Canada, of any of the provinces. So this moment with Donald Trump threatening our country and saying, I want to make you the 51st state, and I want to destroy your economy, so you have to agree to the things that I say. It's been an amazing thing because it's really brought people together, and to be proud of being British Columbian, proud of being Canadian, wanting to support Canadian companies, wanting to support each other and respond to this and ensure that our country is independent and that we maintain our sovereignty. And so it's if you had asked me 6 months ago, would this be happening? Would the American president be threatening Canada's sovereignty? I'd say, no way, that's crazy. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
But so these unpredictable things happen in politics where, and my goal in these moments, and you came through and you were there for COVID as well. It's like, you imagine, you're going to be in a global pandemic where the world economy is going to close and everyone's just going to work from home. Like, what are you talking about? And so these things happen, and you have to bring your values to the table. What are the values? What's important to you in this moment? A proud Canadian, proud British Columbian, want our country and our province to be successful and prosperous and everybody to have a good life here. Those values are so important in a moment. Like, it makes decisions very easy about how to deal with Donald Trump. We're going to defend our province. We're going to grow our economy. We're going to support people if they're hurt by this. And it's the same thing with when Horgan was premier, John Horgan was premier, and we were dealing with COVID. His values around strong public services, responding to this, listening to the medical professionals, making sure that people were supported. That got us through with the best results of anywhere in North America in terms of deaths and also in terms of our economic restart. And so if you have those values that are core to who you are, then I think it makes these challenging, unpredictable situations so much easier to deal with.
Well, because we have a strong foundation
That's
together.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah, and I love how you really bring a lot of optimism into this situation. Challenges sometimes bring opportunities.
Yes, absolutely right.
So we can look at the situation and see how we can come together as a province to be able to deal with the challenges that we face, whether through, with the United States situation or, like you said, COVID or public health. Anything could happen, but it's how we react to it that sometimes matters a lot too.
Absolutely right.
So what are some of the strategies or things that you are doing to, deal with the situation, especially now with this 30-day pause? What's going to happen?
Well, there's three main parts to our response. The first is we have to respond. There are some people out there saying, no, don't make him mad. Don't respond. Just let him do whatever he's going to do, and then he'll lose interest, and they'll feel the tariffs. No, we have to respond. We have to say, if you come at us, we're going to make every single step that you try to take as painful as possible. So don't do it. It's not worth it. It just hurts both of us. It doesn't make any sense. We have to be able to hit back. So response, to do it responsibly and carefully, and because we're smaller than the Americans, but to be effective. To send that message. You don't want to mess with us because it's just, you might ultimately be bigger than us, but it's going to cost you a lot. The second is how do we strengthen our economy so we're never in this situation again with the Americans?
That's right.
We don't ever want to be beholden to one person in the White House ever again. And so that means a couple of things. It means growing our economy and getting projects moving in the province, keeping people employed through this period, and making sure that we're trading across Canada, getting rid of internal trade barriers that stop us from selling things to Ontario that are so easy to sell to Washington State. It needs to be easy to sell to Ontario, but there are all these rules and processes and approvals that don't exist when we sell south of the border. So fixing that. And then the last is diversification. We have to trade with more countries than just the United States. Our two main trading partners are China and the United States right now, and they're fighting with each other. And that means that we could potentially get stuck in the middle and get hurt by both sides in this trade war. And so how do we trade with more countries to be able to diversify our trade around the world? We've opened more trade offices. We took our existing trade offices and we moved them into the Government of Canada offices, so our staff are still there, but they're working in Government of Canada office, so we get more out of our teams with the same amount of money spent. And we're opening new offices in Taiwan, in Vietnam, and in Singapore recently. And we're going to continue to do that work to diversify our trade. We're going to do trade missions to a number of countries across the Pacific. If you wanted to be anywhere to respond to this threat, British Columbia is the place, because we have the resources, which you can't, they're in British Columbia. You can't relocate them to the United States. They're physically here, right?
That's right.
The cheap, clean energy, the location on the Pacific Ocean, close to all of these major trading partners, and most importantly, the people of British Columbia, the ties that we have internationally, a very diverse province, also hardworking, resilient, have been through economic impacts before and come out the other side successful. So I think we're the best suited to respond to this, not just to respond, but to come out the other side even stronger.
Interestingly, I was just having a dinner conversation with a whole bunch of local business people from the Chinese language community. And the things that you were saying are exactly what they were just sharing yesterday.
Is that right?
Yeah, and then because they know my political background, so they were just like asking all these questions about politics and then talking about the tariff situation and everything that you just said, diversifying our trade, strengthening our local economy, and being able to have more Canadian-made products and services that's within our country are some of the key issues that they're raising. So
interesting.
Yeah, as the premier, and with the budget coming up, which I'm definitely going to ask some questions about the budget. I understand you cannot tell the budget until it comes out, but can you let us know what are some of the priority areas that you're looking at in terms of strengthening our local economy, especially supporting our local businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So, businesses here in British Columbia have been pretty badly hurt by high interest rates and the increase in costs of global inflation. A lot of the things they use to either make the products they make or deliver the services they deliver are more expensive. And then the people who buy things from them, they're feeling more strapped. They've got less disposable income. They've got less money to spend. It's been very hard on local businesses. So we were like, well, what are the things we can do to generate more economic activity in the province and to create that economic activity? Because we're very dependent on real estate sales here in British Columbia to drive a lot of economic activity. And that's quite a slow sector right now because of the higher interest rates. So we updated our film and television credit regime to get more major movies and television shows produced here in British Columbia. It drives a lot of foreign investment from the United States, but also around the world in British Columbia in film and television. We're already landing major productions. We've identified 10, more than 10, almost 15, major resource projects in the province, clean energy, wind energy projects, mining, and that we're accelerating through our approvals process at the provincial government so we can get people working on that. A lot of businesses here actually provide supplies and services to companies that do this work across the province, but it also ensures we're creating jobs in every part of the province, not just in the Lower Mainland. And we're also working closely with leaders of a bunch of different economic sectors to respond to this threat. We've got business people, First Nations, and labor leaders all around the same table, assisting government in identifying policies, how we can grow the economy and support their sectors. And it's matched up with politicians and government officials so that as recommendations come from this table, they're immediately implemented by government so we can get things moving as quickly as possible. It's a big priority. This is a major threat to our province, to our country, and so we have to treat this with the seriousness that it deserves.
Speaking of the part about community engagement, how about diverse communities that comes from different backgrounds, cultural, socioeconomic backgrounds, or different situations? How do you incorporate everybody's voice into this engagement process?
Yeah, the important, one of the big pieces actually around this table is while diversity was not the basis that we selected people from the table, you can see diversity around the table because I think people have these interpersonal ties around the world that live in British Columbia, and that has led them to be successful in business as well as in labor. And the other piece is, for the first time, we think in the history of the province, we've got Indigenous leadership at the table that we've never had before at these tables. And this is so important, and it's not like, oh, we want to do this nice thing for the Indigenous people. If the First Nations are not at the table, then the projects don't move. They're tied up in court challenges. Then the Indigenous communities where these projects happen are not participating and they're not benefiting from it. And so if we're all working together at the table, these are groups that have not always gotten along: business, labor, First Nations, provincial government. But if we all understand what the problem is and we're all working together, the solution will be so much better. So that diversity around the table actually helps us design solutions that are going to be more successful.
Okay. Well, how about engaging with Chinese language communities?
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting pieces about this moment is the number of people who have come forward to say, how do we get the message out? How do we support in this moment? And one of the particular efforts that we're going to be counting on from different communities across the province is leaning on them to support our ability to engage economically around the world. It's almost too easy for us. It's led to us relying too much on the United States because they're so close and they're so big and they've got lots of money to spend. And so it has led to overlooking, putting insufficient emphasis on the incredible opportunity we have with the people and the communities that are here. So if it's the Chinese language speaking community, where people have ties to so much of the Chinese diaspora around the world as well as to China itself, or other cultural groups. We've got a very significantly growing Nigerian population in British Columbia, and we don't do a lot of trade at all with Africa. And so making sure that we're able to engage around the world and look at emerging markets as well as opportunities for trading, this will be a key part of our strategy as well.
Well, I'm going to kind of ask the question that's kind of like the elephant in the room, because as a former NDP politician, I got this question all the time.
Sure.
They just have this, people have this misunderstanding, personally, I think, that NDP is not good with the economy, not good with local businesses. But everything that you just said actually shares a lot of opportunities and a lot of great strategies to be able to either go through this challenging time and using the current situation to actually build our strengths and economy down the road. And when now I am engaging in the first Chinese language credit union work, and most of my clients and members who are coming in are small business people. And I kind of laughed about it and say, well, we never trusted an NDP to do economy, and now we're doing a credit union together. But I've been learning a lot through this process about the local small business community and what they need, specifically for a lot of our audiences who may be, a restaurant owner, a small business owner locally, mom and pop shops, that often, struggles with paying staff wages, with increasing costs of supply or materials. What can you do for them, and what is your government planning to do for them?
Yeah, it's a really important question. And first of all, let me just say on that issue of NDP and the economy, I think that there's a reason why our province grew the fastest of any province in Canada economically last year. And that's because the NDP understands that the economy is actually people. And so the childcare program, which I know is close to your heart, enabled so many women in particular to be able to go to work who might otherwise not be able to afford to go to work because they have to pay so much for childcare, assuming they can even find it. And so those kinds of programs, One of the things that I can say we need to do better as the NDP is we need to be talking more often about the economy and connecting programs like that to economic growth and activity. We were the fastest growing economy in Canada of all the provinces last year, and I don't think British Columbians know that. It's not enough. We need to grow even faster. And the way we do that is by training people, by ensuring they have a good place to live, by making sure they have the ability to go to work with childcare. Those are things the NDP really cares about. And we talk about those things a lot, but we don't really connect them to the economy. So you're going to hear me talking a lot more about the economy because that is definitely a message I took from the last election. And it's not just talking about the economy, but it's actually taking specific action that people can see. So for small business owners, we know that they're hurting a lot from the fact that people have less spending money because of interest rates. We talked about global inflation, all these other pieces. We've been doing a number of pieces. We've been, first of all, trying to attract more tourists to the province. Our numbers have gone up quite dramatically in tourism. Some of it is due to big marquee events, the Grey Cup, Invictus Games, all of the different major events that we've been having. But also, I think we're going to see more tourism growth because of our low dollar. And making sure that there are fairs and festivals because of the increased costs. A lot of fairs and festivals we're going to close. And we know that businesses, we just had the Lunar New Year parade. A lot of businesses are dependent on these kinds of things.
That's right.
We also are doing an ease of doing business review. Small businesses have one person, two people. They don't want to be filling out a bunch of paperwork, dealing with government. How do we make it easier and cheaper and more effective for them to deal with government, more efficient, and so that they can increase their business, grow their business, hire more people, and not worry about provincial government processes and red tape.
That sounds great, and I'm so glad that you connected the people and the economy part. That sometimes things that people don't see right away, but investing in people is good for our economy.
Absolutely.
And for a lot of our audiences, especially for families like mine who immigrated here and mostly re-immigrated here for the quality education. And I'm so glad that you mentioned childcare before I did. I'm going to talk about childcare.
Absolutely.
But just about social services part and for public education and childcare that our Chinese language community often really care about children's high quality education. Are there any key actions that your government may be doing for the social services from education, public education, childcare, or other family supports?
Well, your viewers will know that just like their family budgets are under pressure, provincial government budget's under pressure. People spend less money, low resource prices. We have a significant deficit right now. And so we're addressing that through ensuring that government is focused on frontline services that people depend on. Childcare, healthcare, education, transportation. All ministers are doing a review to ensure that our spending is focused on those frontline social services that people depend on from us. The second piece is the reason why we're growing the economy is to make sure we have money for those social programs as well, without having to raise taxes and without having to cut key programs. If we grow the economy, we're able to do more. Specifically for schools and for education, we've made commitments to British Columbians to get more early childhood educators into the school to support those kids who are really struggling so that teachers can focus on the whole class instead of just one or two kids who are really needing extra attention. School counselors in schools so that kids are really struggling, again, get the support to be back on track. Building new schools so that kids are learning in high quality schools. When teachers are supported, when we have good high quality buildings, when we have early childhood educators in there, educational assistants, pardon me, because I'm talking to you, I'm getting early childhood educators into my head. Educational assistants in the classroom, then every kid is going to be successful, and the teacher can challenge those kids who are doing really well on a particular subject and give extra time to kids who need a little bit of extra support. That's just on the education side. We have plans on childcare as well. We don't have infinite dollars to put into childcare, so where can we be the most efficient? These educational assistants, they want to work full-time, but they only work part-time. So part of this program is we'll have full-time days with the educational assistants, so they do before and after school care at the school. The parent fees pay for that educator. They're in the school. The school's already built. We don't have to build new buildings. And so parents, our days as parents, they don't start at 9 o'clock and end at 3 o'clock. They start earlier, they go later, so that before and after school care is really important for so many families. And you and I talked about this on the dash, on this podcast we did together years ago. Now I'm in the Premier's office and we're going to do it because it makes so much sense. And it's going to be very successful.
I hope I have more time to grill you on childcare,
Yes.
and I'm sure you're going to definitely hear from me as a childcare advocate now myself, that we'll continue to have this conversation about childcare. Sure. Can you highlight, just to as a summary, some of the priorities that your government is going to focus on?
Yeah. So the number one priority for us right now is ensuring that families have high quality jobs so they can make the rent, buy their groceries and so on in this time where we're being threatened with some really major economic harm by the United States, and some of it's already starting to show up. So growing the economy, protecting families, responding to the threats from the US, that's not something that was part of the whole discussion during the election campaign because it wasn't an issue at that point. Right. But it's in our face right now. That's priority one. But what was discussed during the election campaign, supporting people with the cost of living however we can, with high quality services, ensuring that the healthcare system is there for people with family doctors, that they're not waiting at an emergency room for hours or the emergency room's closed, getting those doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals working, and ensuring that at the end of the day, that we're delivering those high quality services that people are counting on in strong communities, where it's safe, where people with mental health and addiction struggles are being supported with interventions that get them back on track, and so people feel safe and secure in their home communities. These are the core priorities, and we're going to make sure we're delivering for people.
I love how you talked about the ability to adjust and adapt depending on the situation we're facing, especially as a politician who are making key decisions like yourself. And I've seen your pretty strong abilities on how to deal with the ICBC challenges. It was a dumpster fire and then you totally reformed it. Now I haven't really heard people talking about ICBC a lot anymore. And also many challenges that you and the government has been dealing over the past few years, especially with the impact of COVID. I love to ask this question to all my guests to wrap up the end, especially for you as a father. I used to get asked about this question as a woman in politics, but I love now I can ask a man about this. Yeah. As a father of 3 children, being the premier, you're doing so much at the same time. What would you like to tell yourself when you leave politics, what you've accomplished? What's the most important thing you want to accomplish in this journey as you balance your personal and family life as well?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that I would hope that people would say about me is he did his best to serve people in the province, and so I hold myself to very high standards, and I want to deliver for people, and so those are the things that motivate me, and so that's what I would hope that I would be able to say is I did my best. And we delivered for people on a bunch of their priorities. Here to serve.
Okay. Well, good luck, Premier, and it's so amazing to have you on our show. It's been an honor, actually having to work with you as your colleague, and also being the host to welcome you to our show for the first time.
Thanks, Katrina. Great to be here.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on the show.
Thank you.